Good evening. Welcome to Script Notes, our semi-weekly vodcast where we talk about a script that somebody brings and we discuss. Um, we've got a script today that you can see it's called The Ladder. We'll be talking to its author. But first of all, you know them. They're always here. It's Navian. Hi, Navian.
Hello.
Have you been up to much recently? I know you've been busy preparing for ClockTowerCon.
That's about it.
Yeah, it's coming up. It's quick. It's in 3 days, 4 days. Very soon.
Something like that.
Yeah, I'm flying out on Thursday, so it's functionally 3 days for me. And then I'll see you Thursday night. So yeah, it's a busy time for us all, but we've got time to make to talk about this script, The Ladder, this evening, and to talk about it, of course, joined by its author. That is Dan. Hello, Dan. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. Thank you guys so much for having me. Very much a pleasure to be here.
Glad to have you filling in kind of last minute. Thank you for agreeing to do that. Like I said, we're here to talk about your script, The Ladder, but I don't think you say we've played a few times in the unofficial, once or twice, but I had you on stream before, so why don't you tell us and people who aren't familiar with you, haven't seen you before, a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, no, if I were any of the Clock Tower characters, I would absolutely be the Recluse, because
Okay.
I am much a lurker and enjoyer of the online Blood on the Clock Tower groups, but it's been a very hard time for me to kind of get on stream and be participating and joining all the fun games.
Sure.
I kind of learned about Clock Tower, I guess, as we all kind of did during the pandemic. I think I moved from the East Coast to the West Coast about 5 years ago, and was kind of looking for opportunities to reconnect with some of my East Coast friends. I think we always played Avalon and other social deduction games kind of at nauseum. And then when kind of the brain tool came online and the ability to play online games of Clock Tower, that became one of the things that really connected with me with the East Coast folks.
Sure.
So I had a group running, doing Clock Tower kind of on a weekly basis with them. And then as kind of COVID restrictions started opening up, started playing in person with the folks here in Portland. So I know you've played with Ruth and Benny and
right.
Stefan. That crew is very much now my family away from my East Coast family. So
sorry, the stream doesn't seem to be, or my software doesn't seem to be capturing us. I think we might be in the wrong channel, so can we just hop down to the town hall channel? Yeah, there we go. That's picking us up now. So you played before you played with your current group?
Yeah. I've been playing for at least 2 years now.
How did you find the game particularly? You said you played a bunch of other social deduction games.
Yeah, social deduction games were always kind of the vibe, the things that brought my friends together. And when all the No Roll Card videos came out, all the kind of original Kickstarter character, like everything started coming together, it was definitely an opportunity to pick up on and really start playing this game.
Absolutely. We hear that a fair bit. So I know that the first game that you played on the unofficial was back in October of 2021, a year and a half ago. Were your first games online, or did you play in person at all?
I played online, kind of impromptu games or games off the unofficial. I will play occasional games on the unofficial or the Patreon, but very much now it's an in-person experience here with the Portland group. So I'm very fortunate to have kind of that community here. We do kind of games online and then games in person on weekends. So
Yeah.
it's a lot of fun.
We've kind of accidentally adopted your Portland group somehow on this stream. Wonderful.
They're a good group to have on board.
Yeah, they are. I don't know if any of them are in the audience today watching along, but yeah, it's always good to see them. So, do you remember your first game?
Oh man, God, it was. I'm sure we played a bunch of TV before branching out to the other of the custom scripts. And I think in my original group, I kind of took on the responsibility of storytelling. So I actually didn't wind up playing any games until, I think it was probably like 3-4 months before somebody else wanted to take the opportunity. But this was like, I think when we were all learning the game, we were all struggling to figure out, how to keep games moving, how to kind of, all the early stuff. So I think I started the game mostly as a storyteller, kind of figuring out the ropes. I think I'm trying to remember the first physical game, but that was a long time ago too.
How did you find that running games before you played the game? It's not the path that most people have into it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way that I see the game even still now as a player, and this is kind of strange, is when you spend the time setting up Grims and kind of thinking about the character decisions that you'd make when you put into a setup or not put into a setup, it's interesting to see just the worlds that can kind of spin together there. And I think even when I'm a player, that's often the way that I kind of think about the different roles interacting with each other. So I don't know. It's I wish I had the experience of going in the other direction. And I know a lot of my introducing new folks to the game definitely could be hitting with a fire hose. But I'm sure it was challenging to do that even way back when.
Yeah. Obviously, most people we talked to did play first. I think it might actually be you in exclusive company with Steve in terms of people who ran the game before playing it. I don't know if we had anyone else with that experience, Nadine. Don't know if you happen to remember.
I don't think so. I don't think anybody's mentioned that. If I had to say, I would say potentially Viva La Sam would be a person who might have been in that same boat. But yeah, we haven't had many.
Yeah. We should reach out to Sam and ask. You have several people in chat here to support you, Dan. Got Benny and Sophia.
Yeah, I know this gang. They're all great.
Yeah. So you played some, or you ran some early Trouble Brewing. Which way did you? I'm always curious to hear which way people go from Trouble Brewing. Did you go into Sex and Violence, or did you go into BMR? This is a conversation I've had a few times recently, but I'm curious to hear what you think.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's people that definitely prefer either of those other two, the more advanced scripts for the base 3. I know when we were kind of in the group trying to figure out which games to play and how to advance into the newer scripts, it was a conversation of kind of taking polls for which one we wanted to invest the time into. But we played with Trouble Brewing for a long time. And it is one of the scripts that I think everybody kind of agrees that it sings the best. It's like one of the tighter scripts. So I think we played that for months before we even thought about moving to some of the advanced ones. I think we moved to S&V first and ran that probably a handful of times before even going back to BMR or to TV. But yeah, I'm definitely more of the S&V mindset with games, and even though it can be swingy, like the different ways that the storyteller can interact with the players in S&V, I really enjoy that.
Yeah, I mean, you've kind of preempted my usual question that I always like to ask people, which is, of course, of the base 3 scripts, which is the best? In a word.
You don't need to word it. In my opinion, it's TV. I just think it's the tightest.
Yeah. One day we're going to get somebody who disagrees with that.
No, I mean, so much love and care went into that script too. Like you can tell that the way that,
right,
how tight it all is. It's very, very cool.
So from there, you went into presumably some of your own or some well-known custom scripts. Which custom scripts do you remember enjoying that you played that weren't yours?
I think when it comes to custom scripts, there are I'm very bad with names for custom scripts. I just notice all the interactions that go on with this. I think there are definitely some influences on the script that I have here for stuff that Navian's written in the past. So even being in the presence of Navian and showing her my script is pretty cool. So I'm very excited.
We'd like to make dreams happen on Script Notes. Yeah. Navian does have one or two good scripts, I suppose.
Yes, just one or two.
We'll probably be playing one of them tomorrow, along with this one, of course. So yeah, let's move on to talking about this script. You talk us through the process of building your script. Where does it start? What was the inspiration for you to go, I want to build a script, and this is sort of the themes I'm going for. This is the interesting central thing that I'm going for. Hit us.
I think this script has been an idea that I've been noodling around. I know there have been a lot of script competitions that I've considered submitting it for some of them, but I'm very it's hard to show your report card sometimes. So I get very it's definitely a passion project. Sure. I think where this one originally started, there were a couple really interesting interactions with the magician and the widow or spy, and then the other thing that I've always dreamt about getting to work in either customs, and I've seen some customs that do it really well, but the lycanthrope has been one of those roles that just does not really play well with others, and trying to get that to fit with a potential lunatic. I've seen some scripts do it too. Those two focal points were kind of my, the way I thought about fitting those two things together.
Yeah, like we lunatic by intention isn't supposed to necessarily think it's the lunatic for the whole game, but its home script BMR gives it some reasons to think that it might be the lunatic for at least a while into the game. And I do like that you've got that with your lycanthrope and your mayor. Those are both good characters to put with a lunatic because they explain, wait, the person I picked didn't die. That means that I must be the lunatic. Wait, no, it doesn't. So yeah, I think that's an interesting building block for the script.
Yeah, I think the other thing that I was thinking about when putting the script together was I really do enjoy the minion spread in S&V. I think it is one of those things that really tightens the worlds that you can start building in the game. As you even move to like the 9-12 player count games. So having kind of these loud minions that are loud by virtue of one player saying that they're in play is very, very cool. And the witch does that somewhat, but is public with its being outed. And having the widow there, kind of taking the place of the witch, was the other way I see of seeing the S&V influences kind of permeating everything about the script.
Yeah, you have. I can see the S&V influence in the design. But by no means is it limited to mostly, or even. Yeah, I'd say mostly, but it's no way limited to rebuilding S&V. This script, I think it's fair to say, there's a fair bit of information on it for sure, but which is S&V's thing, information overload. But there's also a fair bit of non-information on it. In, as I said, the mayor, in the magician, in the lycanthrope, and some other characters that obviously we'll talk to. So it's kind of a bit. I think it's a little bit more balanced, to use what is intended. Not balanced as in.
Balanced, like mechanic wise, between the different types of abilities that you have to choose from.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was trying to say. Thank you. Than S&V is, which is, like I said, very information heavy. Is that a conscious choice?
Yeah, very much so. I think listening to different experienced script builders kind of talk about the different spreads of first night information, kind of each night rolls, and then otherwise would be utility rolls, right? Either once use or protection.
Sure.
I think that definitely makes a script kind of balanced in that regard. But I think there's enough interaction here too, where there's different ways that each of the individual characters will interact with other stuff on the script that makes it feel tight.
So let's talk about your the design of your minion choice, that you've got. Each of them is public, but public to one person. Let's say that you're playing a smaller game. I just want to bear down into that one from a slightly critical perspective, if that's all right.
Yeah.
Let's say you're playing a small game. It is usually very good information for the good team to know that exactly one of two players is on the evil team. If you're playing a 1 minion game and you have two people claiming to know that a particular minion is in play, yes, you've distorted which minion it is that's in play, but at the cost of putting yourself in that one of these two players' is evil position. The witch, like S&V does have that, but the witch, and to a lesser extent the pit hag, can be quite quiet, so and they can also both be very loud. But in either of those cases, they're not necessarily putting it all on one person. Whereas here, if I claim that I was Serenovus and you claim that you saw Widow, one of us is lying. One of us is probably on the evil.
Well, here's another interesting part of the script, and that I think makes the going back to kind of the thought process for putting the script together, and I think it makes sense in kind of the origin or background for how some of this stuff came together. Sometimes on this script in particular, you are sometimes incentivized to, throw, and it very much comes into how I've kind of developed as a player and kind of play styles. But sometimes it makes sense to not be as collaborative with your team as possible. I think having the snake charmer on the script and having a magician with it as well can often create game states where there is team switching at a rapid pace. So oftentimes in the script, the lunatic or the demon thinks that they are a lunatic, or you can be in a situation where a widow and a Serenovus are working together and the demon doesn't necessarily know who their team is. So it is a game kind of where fractionalization happens.
Sure.
And you get really interesting breakdowns of worlds.
Yeah, I don't.
Where it's not even like 2 teams are developing. It's like there are multiple teams developing.
Yeah, I don't want to imply that you have nothing to combat that. Obviously, you've got the Little Monster, which means that there could legitimately be 2 of those in play. Yeah. You could, like you say, the Magician is an interesting choice for a Widow ping, because if they out it, then they're kind of throwing their own ability away. But if they don't, then that opens the door for the evil team and so on.
I think the Magician also is really interesting on a Little Monster script. Or sorry, not the Widow, the Magician. The Magician has been one of those roles too that I think, reading about the development of the roles, is a kind of Poppy Grower 1.0. But having it be jinxed with the Little Monster gives it that little extra oomph of information that, the Magician itself knows that it is not a Little Monster game.
Interesting. So you see that as a positive to the script?
Yeah, I see the Magician being buffed by the existence of the Little Monster in the script.
Okay. Yeah,
I think it's definitely an interesting interaction, right? Like, there's a lot of hard jinxes out there that these 2 can't be in play together that are not all that interesting, and like you probably shouldn't even bother having them on the script. But I do actually think that the Little Monster Magician one is pretty okay, right? Especially with all these loud minions. We were just talking about, if you have 2 people claiming 2 different of these loud minion types, then either one of them is lying or it's a Little Monster game, right? In a 1 minion game. And the Magician, if there's a Magician claim, that kind of just adds a third complexity to it of like, okay, well, if we trust the Magician, then we also trust that one of these players is lying, and we just have to figure out which one. Or we don't trust the Magician, and the Magician is actually evil and is just, claiming Magician to cause further confusion about what might actually be in play.
Yeah. I think that Magician, compared to some of the other ones, is I think it's the one that I can go either way on, depending on the script that's built around it. Whereas with Spy, and in particular Widow and the Damsel, I think that more often than not creates an interesting thing, an interesting interaction. Whereas Preacher and Legion is never going to be that interesting, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. I think kind of the difference is that sort of like, does this add an interesting layer of complexity to the puzzle of solving who's good or evil, or is this just like nobody's going to have fun?
Right. Chatter pointed out that you can indeed have, or between you and Chatnavian, you've pointed out that you can indeed have a player think that they're the Magician in a Little Monster game on this script with the Drunk.
Yes. So, as I said in chat, I'll say it out loud here too. If you want there to be a Magician token in a Little Monster game, they would have to be the Drunk. And also, regardless of how the other tokens spell, you cannot make anybody else the Drunk in that case. It's similar to like a Drunk Balloonist. If the Balloonist is the Drunk, then you have not added that extra outsider, which means that you can't make anybody else the Drunk. It has to stay there because you've put in a game state that could be potentially illegal otherwise. So, you have narrowed in on what you're going to do that game, on who the Drunk could be, which is fine. You can definitely do that, and at least some of the time you probably should.
For sure. Yeah, let's talk about the rest of the evil team briefly. You only have one SMV demon here in the Fangu. Talk us through your demon choice.
Yeah, the demon choices have kind of gone through a little bit of a revision. So I have an older version of the script that we can talk about that might actually show some of the transitions, how things developed into the script here.
I can bring it up whenever you want me to.
Yeah, why don't we, if you want to pull that one up.
Okay.
I think originally there was a VIG in the game, and yeah, this is the original one. So this was back when I was trying to incorporate the king and the choir boy into it, and we can talk about that later, but wound up being too much real estate for the townsfolk. This one, the Vig was there to also hide the evil twin, or make it, possible that a evil twin pair had not occurred. Right, give a reason for one of the twins to die. The imp is there as a star pass option. I think the fortune teller was not on this one, but the flower girl was. And the imp gave a release valve to escape there. Puka has a lot of really fun interactions with Innkeeper and the lycanthrope. I think the fact that a player can be Puka poisoned and then not die is a fun little mini poisoner. And then the Vortox there was a similar S&V interaction, creating, I think this one was a little bit more info heavy, and that's why the Vortox was on the script. But as the minions started playing with each other more, when I play tested it, that's when I switched to the little monster to create kind of those multiple minion worlds.
That's what we ended up with in the ladder, as opposed to Chaos in the Court.
The name of the script has shuffled around a little bit. Originally, it was Chaos in the Court because the king was in it, and then I removed the king, and it could no longer be Chaos in the Court. So it had to. I think at one point with the mayor, it was Disorder in the Courtroom, and now it has shifted into the ladder.
Talk us through why you made that change to remove the king.
The king is a fun role, and I think I've always enjoyed that as well. But there was too much going on with trying to create the lycanthrope lunatic interaction to be fun.
Sure.
And it was one of those roles that the king and the choir boy had fun finding each other and hunting, but it was not it didn't do enough for the rest of the things that the script is trying to do to keep it in there.
Sure. There is a somewhat wacky interaction between the Puka and the lycanthrope. Are you familiar with how exactly it works?
My understanding is that the Puka, the poison triggers, and that then the lycanthrope kills, and the formerly Puka poisoned target does not die.
That's usually how it works, yeah. But if the lycanthrope kills somebody and then the Puka picks the lycanthrope is then poisoned and cannot prevent other players from dying, so you would see 2 players die that night.
So the lycanthrope goes through.
Yep.
But the and the previously player poisoned goes through.
That's right, because the lycanthrope is no longer able to protect.
Yeah, which in the world where the pit hag would change would still qualify for.
It's certainly interesting with the pit hag on script. If 2 players die, you can no longer be certain that what just happened.
I think the other thing that I was thinking about by putting the Puka specifically on the script as well is that the demons themselves each of them have their little drawbacks on this version of the ladder. The Puka has the struggle of not being able to bounce around like the other demons, but it can pierce through the mayor on its own. The minions have a way of interacting with the mayor in a way that would keep that potentially a threat that they would need to deal with. So the mayor kind of takes the place here of the king.
Yeah, I mean the mayor can be killed by a Puka with little to no trouble, of course, assuming no lycanthrope, no innkeeper. But yeah, it's an interesting one. You can also Fangu jump if the Fangu attacks the mayor if you really want to. You can just bounce that Fangu onto an outsider. Just be like, hey, Fangu, you're jumping tonight. Congrats.
Don't do that.
Probably shouldn't, because they'll think they've jumped to the mayor.
That's why you don't do that.
But if they've got a widow and they know what's happened, then maybe you could get away with it. But generally speaking, if they wanted to jump, they'd just pick an outsider if they've got a widow.
Yeah, exactly. And if there's more than one outsider still alive at that point, they don't know which one you've jumped them to, which is kind of shitty. Like, you have to explicitly wait for them to come to you.
Yeah, I think it's the sort of thing that falls under an even rarer thing than bouncing a mayor into a star pass. Like, there might be a case where you want to do it, but generally speaking, it's going to really screw over your evil team for no just benefit. But, you know, it's technically an option. Yeah. There is one other little bit of weirdness with the pucker that I'm sure that Navian has noticed, because I know that it's one that you like to point out with the Snake Charmer.
Sorry, what?
Pucker Snake Charmer.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, it's going to cause a night of no death, so, you know.
Potentially. Obviously, you've got Lycanthropon to potentially deal with that, but
yeah.
Pucker is responsible for reasons why there might be no deaths along with Pit Hag. Pucker is responsible for reasons why there might be 2 deaths along with Pit Hag. It all balances out in the great ultimate balancing. I don't know. I feel like there's a word there.
Having Innkeeper there is the other explanation for no death knight.
You've also got Minstrel, which also has some issues, but when does Minstrel not have issues?
Yeah, Minstrel's the one that I don't like. I like everything else that can mess with the death stuff. You know, the Pit Hag, the Innkeeper, the Mayor. I think that all of those can have interesting interactions. But you know, Minstrel it has the same worry that it tends to have on most custom scripts, which is that it feels like too strong, like it's going to be too confirmation-y, and going to be difficult to deal with for evil.
Yeah, talk us through why you chose the Minstrel for the script. I mean, I can see that it's thematic with the Chaos in the Court one, but just from a mechanical perspective.
I think when I was thinking about the Minstrel itself, I was looking for another explanation for no deaths. It is, you know, I would agree that it is a very hard confirmation, especially without the right bluffs. I think what I was looking for, you know, another, I think the script does need slightly more rationale for why no deaths would have happened in a world where you are the demon trying to search for whether or not you're the lunatic.
Sure.
I would suggest Soldier.
Soldier could work. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a reason for no death that somebody may choose to hide after, you know, because there are other reasons there could be no death. It doesn't have that weirdness with the Puka that you might be able to get out of something like Monk. So yeah, I think generally speaking, Soldier works pretty decently. To be fair, there's little, well, I wouldn't say there's little that evil can do about it. They could Serenovus a soldier to try to get them to be executed during the day, or Pit Hag a soldier out of play. So they do have, evil team does have options for taking care of a soldier as well. So that's, you know, like in lieu of a poisoner, there's a Pit Hag here.
Right.
Let's talk about the evil twin for a moment, because linking it back into the Minstrel, that can also be a little bit wonky at times. I have been a Serenovus who got executed in a game. People figured out I was the Serenovus. There was no death in the night, and I think somebody got weird info, so it was pretty clear that I'd been a Serenovus who got executed. And then the good team just decided to kill literally either of the twins, because evil twin is strong.
Yeah, because it doesn't matter.
I think there's a little bit of potential for that to not be ideal, maybe? That makes sense, between Minstrel and Evil Twin?
I think that's never ideal. I think that's always going to be an issue wherein, you know, Minstrel days are frequently pretty obvious, even on BMR, where there's not a whole lot of information rolls where people can point to their screwy information. I mean, there's a good mix here, but there are information rolls, and I think that people would have a hint of, you know, something wrong. I also think that Minstrel's not great with Balloonist either.
Yeah, that's ironically way too harsh with Balloonist.
That is good.
Yeah, because it's like, Balloonist gets a name, and let's say maybe you get the social read or other information that's like, okay, well, this name is one of our evil players, but the Balloonist isn't done yet. So you execute them, and then nobody dies in the night, and then the Balloonist info is just like fucked because you did the right thing and killing the right Balloonist Bing.
My other issue with the Evil Twin on the script is, why is the Lycanthrope not just picking either of them?
Yeah, so that was the when thinking about the script, the thought process behind having the VIG in there, and
Sure.
when I've thought about ways to address that specific problem, the thing that comes into my mind, annoyingly, is putting the VIG in there for the imp, and that is of the things that I have debated on the script. It is putting the VIG back in there.
Okay, that's interesting.
Or, and this is the jinx that I've constantly thought about, of whether or not the Lycanthrope should be able to have that interaction with the Evil Twin.
You can just house rule that the Lycanthrope cannot kill a twin at night, regardless of their alignment.
Yeah, that has been the house rule that I've played with this.
I think that's a decent house rule, and if I saw Lycanthrope with twin, I would probably be inclined to run it that way. That's but fair. Notably, house rule, not the actual interaction.
Yeah, and the VIG would give an explanation for why an Evil Twin would die, other than a Lycanthrope killing it.
Yeah.
But this script also likes to have the potential for a lunatic in the game, and having the VIG be a -1 outsider actually does kind of throw that off.
I also think that Imp is pretty interesting with all of these very loud minions, right? Like at some point in the game, you might have to address whether an Imp star passed to the Evil Twin.
Yeah, I do think that a VIG would be interesting, though, because that's an interesting design choice. Like, usually you look at a combination and go, well, this player clearly has an optimal play. We should probably do something to fix that, whether it's add other options for the player, remove one of the characters that makes it so obvious. But adding the Vigor kind of throws in another option of, let him. It doesn't prove anything anymore.
Yeah, so I also like the VIG for that reason.
I do think that VIG could definitely still work on here. It also works great with all 4 of the minions, just in general, which is often the Vigor Mortis' sticking point.
I mean, the evil team on this script is very SNVE, right?
Yeah.
The whole minion spread is very consistent for why I think VIG does work well with all of those.
Fraser wants to know why you put 2 hypermobile demons in the Imp and the Little Monster on the script together, kind of both that can pass the demon hood onto a minion.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think part of the rationale for the info spread in this game is also not, the Lycanthrope can help find if players are good or evil, but most of them, I mean, with the Fortune Teller, is demon hunting. So having the Little Mansa and the Imp and the Fangu being potentially mobile gives kind of reason for yes pings moving around the circle, not just being caught on one player. Because I think the Puka is the one demon that is at risk with in being in a Fortune Teller, yes.
Sure. Let's touch on your outsider modification for a moment. At the moment, you've got Balloonist and you've got Fangu. So Fangu has some slight shenanigans, but nothing that's like too devastating. Fangu is perfectly normal with a Barber. They're on a script together for a reason. With a Recluse, technically, you can register the Recluse as not an outsider. Then, again, there might be rare times when you want to do that, but generally speaking, if the Fangu attacks the Recluse, you should probably let it go through. Fangu and Lunatic gives it has positives and negatives. In its favor, it gives the Fangu an easy out whenever it wants it, 'cause it knows who the Lunatic is. and yeah, that works for its favor. But the other side of that is that if the lunatic thinks that they're a Fangu and the demon is a Fangu, which is probably the most common way that you see a lunatic and Fangu pair, and the demon,
as I like to call them, the Fangunatic.
Right. Sorry, a lunatic and any demon. Generally speaking, you show the lunatic the right demon. Not always, and you absolutely should probably do it more that you show different demons. But generally speaking, most storytellers tend to show the same demon. So if the Fangunatic attacks somebody, and then a different player dies, and nobody's claiming Lycanthrope, that lunatic might figure out the player who died has just Fangu jumped to the player that they attacked. Obviously, they could be the mayor, they could be killed by a Lycanthrope, you've got reasons for it. And again, I don't think that Fangu and Lunatic is necessarily a bad combination, and you've got, like I say, you've got plenty of justifications for why other things might be happening here. But yeah, what do you think about that one, Dan? Fangu and Lunatic as a pair.
That's very true, and it is one of those things where the back pocket existence of a lunatic for a Fangu is always it's almost like a little cheat sheet. It's a third minion or fourth minion that you can imp to, right, at a certain point, right? The same, you've extended your team, your knowledge there. I think one of the other combinations that even thinking this script together was the Lycanthrope mayor bouncing as being the coverage there for the lunatic. And I've in the number of times that I've played tested this is one of those scripts where I've seen the lunatic be in the dark for longer, because in a lot of games lunatic will figure it out by day 1 or day 2, and I've seen the lunatic use the good players' information to figure out that they are the lunatic in a way that has been hard to find on other scripts.
Naveen, do you have any thoughts on Fangunatic?
I do think that it does sort of feel like the play choices are slightly narrower for the actual demon there, right? For that exact reason. I've been the lunatic who actually the same thing you were just describing happened. I chose a player at night, a different player died. And so I was like, okay, well, there's a world where I'm the lunatic and that was just a Fangu who jumped. So let's kill the person I targeted. And that won good the game. So like I have seen that actually happen. I think that the actual demon, if they have a Fangu token and they hear the lunatic, they have to sort of commit early on, like, okay, well, if I'm not following the demon's kills, then I need to not follow them from the get-go, because if I'm following them and then all of a sudden, it doesn't work, that's just going to get the person who you targeted killed, right? That's a strategy, certainly, that good players, if they figure out they're the lunatic, can try to use, try to target evil players on purpose, especially if the demon has been following your kills prior to that. And it's a strategy that evil can also use if you follow the first maybe 1 or 2 and then purposefully move off of a kill, even though it's on a good player, that can throw off what the lunatic is thinking. But the problem with Fangu is that that's a little bit trickier to manage because you're not always 100% sure when or where you're going to jump to. If you have a widow, that can certainly help you somewhat with that. But, it does feel like maybe your options there as a Fangu are potentially slightly more narrow. And also, if the lunatic comes out as a lunatic and gets trusted, you can't just kill them in the night because you would jump to them. So if you don't want to make the jump to that player because they're too outed as an outsider, for example, your options are a little bit more limited. I don't think they're so limiting that I would say that it's a bad combo. I just do think that it's something to be aware of when you have a Fangu and you put a lunatic in. potentially showing them a different demon type instead of Fangu. So maybe they're less inclined to thinking, oh, this kill that I made didn't go through. I'm just the lunatic, and that was a Fangu who jumped because I saw a Fangu. Or maybe throw in the Fangu token for the lunatic to see when it's not a Fangu game at all. Like, you can do things as a storyteller to sort of help kind of alleviate some of the usual pressures there.
I'm looking at the script more and more, and I think every time I look at it again, I think I realize that the script that it reminds me of isn't SMV, it's catfishing.
There are lots of elements of catfishing in here. There's elements of the dungeons and demons that have been going through the script competition between the pit hag and the widow going on there. So there's definitely inspiration that's been taken from popular scripts.
And it's possible that, catfishing also has a lot of sort of SNV-like elements to it, right? So,
I think catfishing...
It's possible that that's kind of where some of that might be coming from, a common source.
Yeah, I think catfishing is a great blend of all three of them, to be honest. This one probably leans more into SMV than TB or BMR, although I think there's quite a bit of TB in here as well. I don't think there's a whole lot of BMR in the design of the script, despite the fact there are half a dozen BMR characters. Or how many?
Yeah, I can agree with that.
3 or 4? Mm-hmm. Innkeeper, Minstrel, Lunatic, Fucker.
The parts of BMR that I've kept in here are essentially the Lunatic and Rationale for No Deaths.
Yeah. So yeah, I do think it's a blend of TB and SMV in a way that does feel very catfishing. But yeah, that's kind of what catfishing is, and catfishing is a great script. It's a good script to take influence from. Let's talk about the Pixie. I always like to talk about Pixies. What do you think are interesting characters on the script to show a Pixie?
To show a Pixie?
Yeah.
The Clockmaker can be strong. Any of the info roles allowing duplication of information is a good way of confusing states. Innkeeper and Lycanthrope are also very strong because they are strong abilities that you want to keep alive, but also then will throw off why the deaths didn't happen or may not have happened in the way that the player intended.
Sure. Nathan, any thoughts?
I think doing a Pixie Clockmaker could be interesting with demons that can move around, like the Fangu and the Imp, because you can get a different number partway through the game, which is pretty cool. Fortune Teller, Oracle, all great choices. An Innkeeper. I would probably stay away from, I'm not the biggest fan of Pixie Snake Charmer, because if the Snake Charmer does end up hitting you as a Pixie, you're just verifying that the demon is telling the truth, and that's what happened. And it's also a little bit weird to just be outing as a Snake Charmer all the time, and then, if you get figured out as the Pixie, but then you have the ability and then you Snake Charm, you're just also going to get tracked down as the player to kill. So I generally don't really like Pixie Snake Charmer. But Fortune Teller kind of does a similar thing, right? It tries to track down where the demon is, but it does it much better for a Pixie. I've never actually seen a Pixie Juggler go off before. I would be interested to see that, although it does require the weird sort of awkwardness of juggling every single day until you finally get your information, and then you also might need to have other people cover for you so that you're not just killed immediately after getting your Pixie Juggler ability. And then there's also questions of well, if I'm the Pixie who's seen a juggler and I juggle every single day, am I actually being mad as a juggler? Because jugglers don't do that.
Yeah.
Does that read too much like Pixie madness? And you might never know. But I do actually think Pixie Mare is an interesting one where you might never know if you really get your ability or not. because you're not woken up or told anything. But I think Pixie Mare's, of those types of roles, one of the more interesting ones.
I think if I were the Pixie Mare, I've said this before, I think if I were the Pixie Mare, I don't think I would go for the ability because I don't think I could trust that I got it. It's less bad on this script because there's no poisoner or intermittent one-night poisoning aside from the Innkeeper, who I suppose can track it. But yeah, I don't think I would trust myself to go for the Mayor ability or the Mayor win. However, that doesn't mean that it's a useless ability, because confirming that a Mayor is in play is super strong for a Pixie to do, just in general.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably trust that I would have the ability if I'd stuck with Mayor, but like, I appreciate that not everybody's going to necessarily play Pixie the same way that I do. But yeah, even if you decide not to, if you decide it's not worth that risk, you are verifying that the Mayor is good. And the only way that they would be poisoned is A, a Widow, which you would likely know about by the end of the game because somebody will have said it, or B, there's a Puka, which, you know, I find that it's not all that difficult most of the time to track down whether it's a Puka game or not by the end of it. Like, it's certainly usually not solved on day one, but most of the time by the end of the game, Puka gets tracked down a bit.
Yeah, I think the script has a number of interesting things. You know, as we said, the Clockmaker can track down jumps and baby movements and so on. Or it can be messed with by the Recluse and imply that a jump has happened when it hasn't. You can, but that still gives info, because that gives two separate numbers, one of which involving the Recluse, one of them not. Like you say, I think that Oracle and Innkeeper are both interesting characters to give, because they keep, rather than giving an entirely new copy of an ability, a complete refresh, they basically keep an ability in play for an extra night or however long one of them survives. It's kind of like the extra life that the Pixie Poppygrower gets, or the Philo Poppygrower. I've never seen a Pixie Minstrel. I don't know how I feel about that, divorced from the fact that Minstrel I don't think fits in general. And obviously you almost certainly want to stay away from a Pixie Balloonist or a Pixie Magician, because they're probably not doing much apart from confirming the Balloonist or Magician, which isn't as strong as confirming a Mayor, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if I'm a Pixie and I see a Balloonist, I'm probably just there to verify the Balloonist, like, by the time that I get the ability. A, it might be too late to be meaningful, or B, like, because the Balloonist has died, your information is essentially reset. You have no idea, like, your information is not able to be used in conjunction with the previous Balloonists. Unlike an Oracle, right, where you are a continuation of the same ability that is going to have a static number. So yeah, like, if I'm a Pixie Balloonist, I'm like, well, I'm not gonna bother, like, trying to get my ability, except maybe, like, to confuse the evil team about where the real Balloonist is and maybe try to soak up the kill, rather than, you know, trying to actually gain the ability.
Yeah. Xeon points out that a Pixie Cannibal can potentially be interesting, and I agree with that. I think I've probably shown more Pixies Cannibal than any other character. I don't know why. It's just always an interesting character to show, because they don't have the information that a Cannibal would have. So the risk is high that they just don't get believed and potentially get executed. But the reward is also really high, because Cannibal, pretty strong character. But yeah. The other one, of course, for the Fangu, just to jump back to that, is the Drunk. Yeah, you can be a townsfolk and just randomly get Fangu jumped. It's fine.
I do know some people who don't particularly care for that interaction, but I don't personally mind it. I would say, though, that some of the strength of the Balloonist is kind of taken away by the fact that there's a Drunk there. Like, you have a Fangu on the script. You don't really need to have a hidden outsider at all, because they're going to hide from the fact that there's a Fangu on the script. So having a Fangu and a Drunk and a Balloonist kind of, it just makes it much more difficult to parse, whereas I think you could probably get away with swapping Drunk out for something else.
I'm curious to hear your opinion on, or your reasoning, your rationale for putting the Balloonist on the script, Dan.
Yeah, to add some flavor and in defense of the drunk a little bit. There is a kind of an interaction here that I was actually talking about with Sam on the Patreon Discord earlier this week that validated my kind of interactions there, where a pit hag can create a lunatic, and in the world where it gives basically the option of telling the newly created lunatic that they were Fengu jumped to, which is kind of why the drunk lives there, to make a townsfolk think that world is a possibility. The balloonist,
that's fair.
The balloonist is there to survive or exist as another way of adding outsiders that is independent of the Fengu. I think a lot of times Godfather gets added into scripts as like the one outsider modification, and since this specific script didn't want to do too much with the outsiders or the minions, I wanted to stay away from a Godfather outsider modification.
I do like that, pit hag turning somebody into a lunatic, and so even if they started as a townsfolk, you can tell them they're now an evil Fengu, since the drunk is on the script. I think my issue personally isn't between the Fengu and the drunk, but it's that specific combo of the balloonist and the drunk, and especially with the Fengu, because the balloonist now can't be certain about how many outsiders are supposed to be in play, and B, with a drunk being completely hidden and a lunatic being partially hidden, and because a lot of the things on the script are kind of helping that lunatic continue to think that they're a demon because there's reasons for their abilities to miss, right? That's more hidden than it might be on other scripts. And so having that many hidden outsiders with the balloonist and with the Fengu, who can also add in an outsider, I think just makes it trickier for the balloonist specifically. So I'm fine with leaving Fengu and drunk on there. And I think that is, of course, a very fun interaction with the pit hag. So I'm looking more at balloonist of could this be traded out for something else instead?
No, that's interesting. I from the ability of the balloonist perspective, and this has even been good feedback with the minstrel as well. It does seem like the balloonist existed there to add in the outsider, but not necessarily help with the balloonist info per se. So
yeah,
this has all been good feedback.
I do think that looking at the balloonist and seeing the +1 outsider and having your eyes light up at that can be sometimes a little bit dangerous, because balloonist is still a townsfolk, so you need to make sure that you're getting the most out of a townsfolk ability. That said, I absolutely think there are scripts that have done it a lot worse than that. I think balloonist really.
I agree.
I think balloonist really suffers with intermittent poisoning. So I don't think balloonist poisoner is a good combination, but you've not got a poisoner. The Pucker is probably quite strong against the balloonist because it has 4 nights to disrupt its info, whereas most demons have 3. That's not game-breakingly strong. They still need to permanently take the balloonist out to deal with it. I think the biggest threat to the balloonist is actually the innkeeper. I think that if there's an innkeeper and a balloonist in play and they don't, and the innkeeper accidentally picks the balloonist, then that's not good.
Yeah.
I know that there's been a fair bit of criticism of the balloonist in general. It's a very tricky character to balance around. I have a thought, or a potential thought for you, Dan. How would you feel about replacing the balloonist and maybe even the Fengu with some other demon, and adding a sentinel onto the script?
Interesting. And leaving the sentinel as the outsider modification for the whole script. That's interesting. I could see that working. As this conversation around outsider modification has hopped in, the thing in the back of my mind that is constantly creeping up is whether or not the VIG can come back in. and then the Vig and
Sure.
Fangu can serve as the traditional SNV outsider mod. Yeah, the balloonist. This has been a really good conversation around whether or not the balloonist makes sense here.
I do appreciate that you paired it with Widow, though, which, you know, as Zaleo pointed out, like a balloonist with a poisoner sometimes feels extremely rough for players, but like the Widow being much more loud makes it, and more limited, makes it much better to deal with as a balloonist.
Yeah. I think, and this is a bit of a weird suggestion considering it would radically change the identity of the script. So feel free to throw it in the bin if you don't like it. But I think that with a couple of changes, this script could work with Legion. There are a couple of characters that don't play nice with Legion, Minstrel being the big one, but also Lycanthropal, though. I have a couple of question marks with Lycanthropal and Lil Monster as well, but we can come back onto that. Magician with Legion can be a bit rough, and Snake Charmer is horrible. But with the core of the scripts in the in the loud minions, and the things that can happen with your other demons, some of the townsfolk, I think it could work, but it would be a significant change in the script's identity. I think it could work.
I can see Legion. I'm definitely a Legion fan. There are some folks that are in the PDX group that are Legionophobes, but I'm very much a pro Legion. Keeping consistency alive.
I'm hearing in chat that I owe you an apology because you hate Sentinel.
I don't hate Sentinel. I just get ribbed on it because when people want to add it to the base 3 scripts, part of me like dies inside.
Don't do that.
Well, that's because that's not supposed to happen.
I know.
Don't do that.
So that's an understandable thing to be not happy about.
Oh my god! I think your whole group is here. Hello, Portland group.
I don't think that I don't think that there's any need to take Fangu and Balloonist out and go a Sentinel route. Like, I think you could, but I definitely don't think you have to. I think if you're going to drop just one, probably Balloonist is what I would drop right now. But you know, yeah, that's what I feel about that.
Sentinel drunk is also horrible. Worth saying. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, like if you were going to change out to a Sentinel, I would definitely recommend to change the drunk to something else.
In your opinion, Damien, with and this is maybe moving us to the minstrel conversation. If the balloonist is off the script, does that make the minstrel play nicer with the rest of the things? The minstrel was one of the later additions to the script. Actually, I don't think was even in the original 1.1 or whatever version. But I was looking for other rational ways for why there would be no deaths on multiple characters other than the innkeeper. And I think that's why the minstrel existed there.
I think it would play a little bit better. I think you'd still have issues with Juggler. So if for whatever reason a minion gets like randomly executed on day one, because, you know, we all know that happens sometimes. Social reads can out people, or just, who knows, luck of the draw. You might have some pretty unpleasant interactions with like Juggler Minstrel there, but certainly it does clear up what is a pretty negative reaction between two townsfolk if you were to take a balloonist out. So I think Minstrel would overall be more palatable there, but it would still be something that, like, as you're playtesting the script, that would be the thing that I would recommend keeping an eye on. Like, how does Minstrel actually play out? How much does it just hard confirm players? You know, how does it feel when you're evil and you have a Minstrel in the game? Yeah.
I think it maintains its red flag with the evil twin is the other thing.
And I agree with that. Definitely maintains a red flag with evil twin as being a pretty nasty combo.
The evil team would know that there's, or in a lot of cases would know that there's a minstrel in play, though, if it triggers, which they wouldn't in which they wouldn't necessarily in BMR. There are plenty of reasons in BMR why something might not happen. But if they suddenly stop getting lunatic pings for a night, then, that can happen in BMR, I suppose. There's an Exorcist in BMR, so
And there's also like, it could be a Pocharge, it could be a Zombuul, right? There's
right.
multiple evil reasons in BMR why there might be no deaths at night. Whereas I think this script, like, it's got Pit Hag, so it does have the one. Yes, that could have been a demon change, but if that happens multiple times in the same game, as evil can be unlucky enough to have that happen, I think that becomes a vanishingly narrow, like, possibility. So there's, in my opinion, there's not enough like evil reasons for there to be a no death that is going to cause the good team to worry.
I agree.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
I think another townsfolk that I absolutely love with the demon choices, but I think is a little bit not great with Minstrel again, but for subtly different reasons, is your Oracle. Oracle with Fangu, Imp, and Null Monster, fantastic. Oracle with Pucker, I think there are interesting things to be done there. I don't know if I've seen it, but I can definitely see it being an interesting one. But an Oracle with a Minstrel can probably detect those jumps better than an Oracle with no Minstrel on the script, considering that if there was a death and there's somebody claiming Minstrel, and your number increased, and there was a death the previous night as well, you've just caught an evil player dying in the night, pretty much for sure. You've got Oracle with you got the Recluse that can throw shenanigans at the Oracle, which I'm coming round on, but I'm still a little bit. I think on this script, I think there's pros and cons on the script. But yeah, I think Oracle is a slightly less obvious one that's a bit weird with Minstrel, but I'd like to see it.
Yeah, I agree. Oracle can kind of bust up some of those potential evil bluffs for when Imp or Fangu are passing, or even if the storyteller's choosing to kill a minion in the night of a low monster game. But I also think that's true of Oracle most places. The big difference between when you see Oracle on a custom script and its place in BMR, or not BMR, S&B, is the Vortox, right? There are reasons that an Oracle could get a wrong number here, right? You could have a Recluse, but if nobody dead is claiming Recluse, then you don't. Or you have a Fangu or an Imp, or maybe your Puka Poison. So maybe it gives, you wait like one day. You could also be the drunk, of course. There's that. But if you have a sudden spike in your Oracle number, Widow Poison as well. Without the Vortox there, and Clockmaker, I think, suffers a little bit from it too. No Vortox to sort of make people really hard question it. But again, it has those same sort of counters as the Oracle does, which is it has a Recluse. I think Recluse Clockmaker definitely kind of helps ease some of the pain of Clockmaker just outing the evil team, especially without a Vortox on the script. So yeah, Clockmaker, if they don't die early, they know they wouldn't have been Puka poisoned most likely, unless they find an Innkeeper or a Lycanthrope, I guess. So, there's an okay amount of reasons here for people's information to be wrong. Enough that it's probably fine with Oracle getting a high number and thinking that they're finding an evil player who died at night, but maybe actually that didn't happen.
Let's talk about the Innkeeper for a second. How easy do you feel it is to use the Innkeeper's Droizen on this script?
The Droizen piece.
Sorry, the drunkenness. Yeah, the drunkenness of the Innkeeper.
I think the drunk there exists as a catch in certain areas. The friction with the balloonist has definitely come up and as a potential. There's no poisoner there, but with the multi-night info rolls, it's helpful. I also see the protection that the innkeeper is giving out as being the big boon to the script, because the lycanthrope is just as susceptible to innkeeper misinformation as the evil team. So
sure. I think
the drunkenness piece was is not as connected to the rest of the script, I don't think.
I think that you need to be aware of that though, because the innkeeper, the drunkenness of the innkeeper is supposed to be a significant downside, but it's not supposed to completely wipe out an ability. But if we look at the townsfolk that the innkeeper can drunk, I think there's only 3, not counting itself, maybe 4 if you include the minstrel, that I think is in the sort of like correct sort of power balance field. Because if the innkeeper drunks the clockmaker, it doesn't do anything. If it drunks the magician, it doesn't do anything. I suppose if it drunks cannibal, that one's interesting. If it drinks the pixie, that's either not going to do anything, or it's going to make the pixie incredibly sad. I don't think that one's the worst one. But then we look at the others: balloonist, and oracle. To go back to what I was saying there, it's quite hard to lie to an oracle that's been drunk by the innkeeper without confirming the innkeeper has been drinking the oracle. Because if your number goes up and then it goes back down again, you know you've been messed with, and there's not really a lot that can do that. But the other ones that you've got are the mayor, which doesn't do anything. Then you've got the juggler, the balloonist, and mostly the juggler and the balloonist, where it can completely wipe out the ability. And then finally, you've got the fortune teller, the snake charmer, the lycanthrope, and the cannibal, which I think it is interesting with, and maybe the minstrel as well. I just think that the innkeeper's drunkenness is weird with info rolls, because it's either too confirming or too destructive. If that makes sense? I'm aware I said a lot there to say one particular thing, but yeah.
I think that the important thing to keep in mind as a storyteller is that drunkenness and poisoning doesn't equate to giving false or wrong information. A lot of the times you will, but I think that you need to be aware as a storyteller that some of the time it's better not to. And I think that when you do have minstrel on a script that has a lot more information than, BMR does, that would be something to keep in mind. What of these roles can I reasonably lie to and not give away that, something has gone completely wrong? Not just with minstrel, but innkeeper as well. What can I lie to here? What can't I lie to here? And for the most part, I think it's okay. You just need to have a storyteller who knows how to apply a little bit of nuance or finesse to some of that misinformation that they would be giving out for either the drunkenness caused by either of those roles. I do think the innkeeper plays interestingly with both Puka and lycanthrope, so I like it for those reasons alone.
Yeah, that was the main reason it lived on the script. There was since we have PDX people in the chat, there was a really fun interaction that we had during an Al Hadikia game, which could have cost the evil team the game, where even the innkeeper's protection was enough of a monkey wrench in things that it you almost are a liability sometimes as the innkeeper in an Al Hadikia game. So the similar thing kind of happens here with the lycanthrope. In certain ways.
Okay, fair enough. If your testing shows that it works, then that's fair enough. I do agree that a storyteller has to wield the tool of Droizen responsibly, but at the same time, it's supposed to be a downside to lots of protection. In the case of the Innkeeper, I suppose it does also mess with the Lycanthrope, so yeah, that's also a downside that I suppose makes up for it. So, fair enough. Yeah, do we have anything else that we need to touch on that we've not really spoken about? Juggler Drunk, thoughts?
So the Juggler came onto the script for a couple of reasons. One, I was, looking kind of at the roles that would hunt down demons, right? The fortune teller on this one, and the flower girl on the original 1.1 version. There was very little interaction with roles themselves. So part of the Juggler being there is to help town get idea of actual character claims rather than alignment claims. And it also kind of plays with Pit Hag in getting that info out and about in the town. The drunk there, I think the confirmation of finding whether or not it could potentially be the drunk is helpful. But the Juggler made its way onto the script because Dreamer was too strong, and other ways of getting individual character information was limited to the pixie for town. So that was why I guess Cannibal as well, but Cannibal is its own can of worms. So yeah, so that was the rationale behind Juggler finding its way there.
Okay. If you're the widow, yes, sorry, Nathan, go on.
Oh, I was just gonna say, without a Vortox here, I quite like Juggler and Drunk because it gives a certain amount of, like, if they do end up juggling the Drunk, it gives a play in the numbers that makes it a more interesting thing than, than a Juggler without a Vortox on the script. And it gives a little bit of basically it gives in a Vortox game, a Juggler, if they juggle evil players, is likely to get a number that supports them, right? In a Juggler with a Drunk on the script, if they juggle evil players, now the evil has a bit of an out and saying, well, you must have juggled a Drunk somewhere, or maybe I'm the Drunk or something. So it gives a little bit more breathing space to the Juggler information for the evil team, but is still an interesting interaction for the Juggler, and helps track down exactly where the Drunk potentially could be, depending on how many players the Juggler juggled and what their number is and what people are sticking with.
Okay. Let's have a quick look at the Clockmaker before we go on to the Widow, which I was about to talk about. Is Clockmaker against the Evil Twin too strong without Vortox?
Yeah, so I've waffled back and forth with the First Night info rolls on the script as the other back and forth. The one latest edition was the kind of Clockmaker and Noble, pairing for First Night info rolls. There were a couple playtest experiences with the Noble getting Recluses that made me not super happy. And then I also wanted to find ways of getting Evil Twin information, more directly out there. I think it is very powerful when an Evil Twin is in the game. But I think I'm at this stage okay with that, with Recluse on the script. But it is, that Evil Twin Clockmaker interaction can be good in creating evil team pairs, but hopefully it's not too strong with Recluse.
Yeah, I think Drunk and Recluse can help manage some of that somewhat, but if you do in more playtesting end up finding that it actually goes quite strong most of the time, despite the Recluse and the Drunk being on the script, maybe a chef instead. You get some information about where evils might be sat without it being explicitly pointing at a demon.
Yeah, that's true too. In my playing of Trouble Brewing, the chef has always seemed to be I'm never disappointed to be the chef. And I wonder sometimes in terms of balance between chef and clockmaker, when you prefer to be one over the other. But that I'm sure is a permanent conversation.
I think the risk of a chef non-zero in an Evil Twin game is still really dangerous.
I think it depends on exactly where the twins are sat and where the chef is sat. Like if the chef is a neighbor of one of the twins, that kind of helps narrow quite a lot of things down for them. But if the chef is not neighboring any of the twins, you still have, and the twins are also not neighboring a same player. You now have 4 players who could potentially be evil, and you're not guaranteed that one of them is a demon if you're in a 2 or more minion game.
So let's look then, as I was saying, to the Widow. What's the Widow's juiciest target here?
Ooh, juicy target. I would say probably themselves.
Okay.
But I think there's a lot of good targets here. Any of the each night rolls. I think the one that I would never target in this script is the Snake Charmer. There's a bunch of fun interactions that can happen between Snake Charmer, Widow, and Magician pair that we have not gotten to yet. But there's I've seen this script played a couple times in where things entirely new teams are created, and that could be a fun way of piecing together where the game state is by night 3 or night 4.
Sure. Go on then, talk to us about the Snake Charmer.
I mean, I've seen Snake Charmers in S&V and Evil Twin pairs, right? Interact in ways where you can buddy up with your twins. I've seen Snake Charmers and be approached by widows. There's definitely the Snake Charmer can play for good, and poke around in a couple places, but it's definitely a high risk, high reward in this particular script.
Fair enough. Nathan, what do you think about the Widow question? What do you think is a juicy Widow target?
It would really depend on what demon type I have and what exactly is in play, right? Like if I have a Puka for a demon, I'm not going to be tempted by a Lycanthrope. I could just tell my Puka to poison the Lycanthrope. Certainly Clockmaker, Balloonist, you don't really have as much need to poison, just because you can just tell the demon to kill them on night 2 or whatever, and get them out before they even get all of their info. I would probably consider a Fortune Teller. I might do a Snake Charmer just depending on how much I feel if I want to deal with a Snake Charmer happening or not. Or I might just tell the demon, here's some people to kill and try to get them just killed early. Maybe an Innkeeper, probably a Minstrel. Yeah, those would probably be my picks.
I think a Pixie is my go-to. I think that a Poison Pixie can do devastating things to in favor of an evil team.
I think night 1 rolls should not be overlooked as good Widow targets. They are absolutely devastating when they're wrong.
Yeah, a Widow poisoned Clockmaker on this script, the way it's currently set up, would be pretty brutal.
Xeon says that a self-poisoning Widow is a little harder on this because the other minions are very loud. Well, I suppose the counter to that then is to bluff one of those other minions.
Yeah, claim one of the other minions is in play. I will note so the only thing, so there is the sort of like built-in Widow bluff of like Widow can bluff a cannibal pretty easy. So
yeah,
that's good to have on a script. Like, I think that if you have Grim Peekers, it's useful to have something that interacts with knowledge of the Grim, like an Undertaker or a Cannibal. Because A, for the good team, that's really quite powerful and good to know. But B, it's balanced out by the fact that there's a Grim Peeker on there, and therefore nobody can just look at the Cannibal and be like, well, you're just guaranteed a hard confirmed good player, right? Because they could just have been a Widow.
Sure. Yeah. Any other thoughts? You've obviously got the Clockmaker looking at first night things. But yeah, I think that there are plenty of good options for a Widow, and I do think that you can make picking yourself work. What else do we need to talk about?
Being a self-poisoning Widow who then takes a cannibal bluff and gets imp past 2 is a pretty cool combination.
And then claim to have been pit hagged, and your Puka poison player gets killed. Claim that you were pit hagged, so that later when there's a no death, it just looks like a pit hag demon change. Yeah.
Yep. Let's talk about Magician and Evil Twin, which is either weird or is unhelpful, one or the other. So you kind of got two options there. If you've got if you make the Magician the Evil Twin, that is incredibly silly because I believe that the Evil Twin is shown a demon character. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
So yeah, you will wake the Evil Twin up and point at a player and be like, "Hey, this player is the Puka. They are your Evil Twin. Also, they are your demon, and so is this other player. Good luck, have fun. Good luck figuring that one out." Which kind of obsoletes the Magician. But if you don't make the Magician the good twin, then you still kind of obsoleted the Magician because the demon will know, oh, one of the twins was a minion. The other wasn't a minion. I wonder who my minion could be. Obviously, the Magician can make social plays around that. They can see who runs off to talk to the Evil Twin. They can see... they can themselves claim to be an evil twin and point to a random player and be like, we're twins, that's this other thing. But then if that other player turns around and goes, well no, we're not, then the demon might just be able to figure out what's happened. Are Magician and Evil Twin a good fit?
I mean, the Evil Twin Magician pairing is it is a weird combination to have on the script. I know the Magician is there mainly to interact with the Widow, and to create kind of the fractionalization. It's an interesting pairing there. I think it's more palpable in larger player count games. In a 9-player game with a Magician and Evil Twin, I'm sure things would get very reductive very fast. But it's one of those things too where when the evil team don't know each other, you can create really wonky game states with minions and demons not really working together.
I think that Magician and Twins is fine. Like you said, I think if you're a magician, you can try to keep an ear out for who seems to be, pretty keen on talking to a player who is a twin. But that also relies on the twins coming out pretty quickly and early, which they may not. So you may not be able to do that. But for the most part, I think it's okay. Like, it's not the strongest combo, but it's also not the worst thing in the world. It's just kind of middling.
It also runs a risk, if that is the strategy that the Magician goes with, of being like, oh, you spoke to the Evil Twin, you're on the evil team, which negative play patterns and all that.
I mean, how much a group enjoys or rejects whisper tracking, basically, is going to vary. I don't personally enjoy it, but some groups do.
Of course, but you're kind of saying that that's the magician's only part in the game, really, considering that the demon is going to immediately know who one of the minions are, and then if they talk to them, who all of the minions are.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a middling combo. Like I said, it's not the worst thing in the world, but it's not great.
Yeah, and then the magician is then buffed by Little Monster as well, right? Then they at least know with their information that it is a
right. Yeah, they're also getting information that it's definitely not a Little Monster game.
The minion count,
unless they're the drunk.
Apparently, I've accidentally sold Benny on thinking that it's a hilarious and excellent combination. Awesome. Yeah. Is there anything else that we really need to talk about on the script? Anything that either of you want to bring up that we've not mentioned so far? We've spoken about Clockmaker, Pixie, Balloonist. We haven't really touched on the Fortune Teller. I don't know if there's a whole lot to say. It works well with the Recluse. It gives an extra red herring functionally. The demons have a lot of mobility, so unless it's a pucker, they can probably get away with being picked. It can't be pinned down that easily. And even if they do get pinned down, 2 of the minions help them survive that. Any thoughts on the Fortune Teller? It seems a pretty good fit to me.
Yep, seems fine to me. Snake Charmer, Recluse, yes, but don't.
Of course.
I actually do want to address the fact that, so like, one of the things that I think about when I'm making scripts is what like kind of niche is this character fulfilling on the script. And there are several characters that fulfill similar niches in the same way, but they do so in a way that generally you usually only want one. Like Chef and Clockmaker, for example, you probably don't really want or need both. Undertaker, Cannibal, same thing. They're covering a similar niche in a different way. Fortune Teller and Snake Charmer are kind of doing that as well. You know, you have a Fortune Teller who's here to track down the demon, and a Snake Charmer here to technically track down who's not a demon, which is basically tracking down who's a demon, but in a slightly different way and a more risky way than the Fortune Teller. So how do we feel about having both of those on the same script? Like, basically, do they cover that niche differently enough that it's interesting to still have both? Or is there maybe an unforeseen kind of, interaction between them?
Duplication of information.
Duplication of information, but also like a Fortune Teller can verify whether a Snake Charm claim is likely to be true or not, right?
Yeah, that's interesting.
I honestly think I would be fine with a Fortune Teller and a Snake Charmer in any size game together. I think that the Fortune Teller can only sometimes verify a Snake Charm claim.
That's true. It could be a minion bluffing, for example.
Right.
Also, the demons themselves are kind of bouncy. Which was an intentional thing there. So I think the reason that there's so much demon tracking also is for lunatic tracking, because the lycanthrope lunatic piecework together is definitely I'm sure folks that definitely everybody here has thought about how to make those things work, but that was my attempt of trying to give the lunatic a bone with that demon tracking information, because
that's fair.
If a Fortune Teller and a Snake Charmer said that they picked you and you are still looking at a demon token, you at least then have some sort of backup to trust fall into town.
Definitely true.
I think it's fine, personally.
Okay, what if you get Fortune Teller as a bluff and Snake Charmer as well, and so you give them out to your 2 minions to bluff that they're both the Fortune Teller and a Snake Charmer who's chosen you, so you must be the lunatic, so you're confirmed.
Wacky as fuck. Love it. What makes good cannibal food on the script? Cannibal and Minstrel. Looking back at the Minstrel again, Minstrel kind of takes away it doesn't take away the negative of the cannibal, but it kind of doubles up on the poison of the cannibal that kind of just doesn't really end up having an interaction. But how about the other characters? Are there interesting interactions with the other characters? Cannibal Juggler, potentially quite strong, although you've run into the pixie issue that we spoke about earlier. It's wacky. I think, to be honest, I think that if the juggler ever claims to die, everybody should just have a juggle. Just celebrate the last juggler's life.
Juggle every day. All players. Yeah. Constant juggle.
I don't see how that could get on anybody's nerves at all. Yeah, so what else have we got? The cannibal does. Magician doesn't do anything really. We've spoken about the Clockmaker with the Pixie. Kind of covered most of it with the Pixie, really, but is there anything special for the cannibal that either of you can see, or that you've intentionally put on there for?
I mean, I think Cannibal does some of the similar things that Pixie can do, of sort of like, you know, I'm just keeping an Oracle number alive for an extra day. At the same time, though, like if that player is getting executed, it's quite possibly because they're at least a little bit suspicious. So sorting out whether your Oracle number was correct or not can be difficult, because if they're actually the Oracle, then, you know, yeah, you just killed a good player and the number's not going to tick up. If the Oracle was evil, then you're poisoned and the number's probably not going to tick up. So Oracle's not really fantastic ultimately. Lycanthrope potentially is interesting because you can prove to yourself that the Lycanthrope is telling the truth, and therefore you know whether to trust their previous choices or not.
And then it turns out that the Lycanthrope was actually the Snake Charmer, and you're the demon now.
Yeah, now you're the demon, and the demon is a poisoned cannibal
who's been claiming to be the cannibal all game. Have fun.
Yeah, so I don't think there's not like fantastic cannibal food here. If I were a Clockmaker, I might consider it like halfway through the game, you know, like right before you hit the point where it's like absolutely critical to definitely kill evil players or you'll just end up losing. I might be like, yeah, okay, I'm a Clockmaker. Let's go ahead and kill me for the cannibal and see if they get a different number and we can get a read on whether we think there was a Fangu jump or an impasse happening.
Yeah.
I think Balloonist is the same problem with Pixie, where it's like, great, you get one name, and that means nothing in relation to anything else.
If you are the cannibal with the Balloonist ability, and you know that the Balloonist is executed on the third night, or more likely, actually, to be fair, if you're the Pixie, who saw the Balloonist and the Balloonist was executed or died to the demon with 3 names. Do you expect that your name is a continuation of that? Obviously, mechanically, it doesn't have to be, but do you kind of put anything into that the storyteller might throw you a bone and give you a continuation of the previous Balloonist ability?
Really depends on how I feel about the game state. If I think that evil is crushing it, then yes, I would probably expect that to be more likely the case. If I can't tell, or if I think that good is doing really well and we've got multiple evils dead and we're narrowing in on the demon, then I probably would expect to get not a continuation.
I think an interesting thing to do with the cannibal Balloonist is to just wake them up and point to themselves, because that way they can then push for no execution tomorrow, and they can then learn a player who is definitely not a townsfolk.
Yeah, we could do that.
It's a way of giving the cannibal Balloonist some information. Obviously, Balloonist could be evil, cannibal could be drunk, etc., etc., etc. But if you trust that Balloonist, well, why are you executing them? But if you trust that Balloonist, potentially really powerful info for the cannibal. Yeah, Dan, is there anything else that you think the cannibal does that we've not drawn attention to?
No, that about covers it up. I think the Clockmaker cannibal interaction of getting different numbers with as mobile the evil team is actually a cool little interaction there.
Sorry.
No, go for it.
how do you both feel about the interaction where if the lunatic is executed, the demon learns who the cannibal is? Obviously, obviously they would be told who the lunatic is, but they could figure that out.
Yeah, they would be told this player is your lunatic. They all of a sudden have a new lunatic, and therefore they know it must be the cannibal. Shrug. It's another interaction that I would call middling.
Dan, any thoughts?
I mean, I think the cannibal lunatic interaction is fantastic. I like the ability. Yeah. The fact that the lunatic is outed to the demon is bad, but the fact that the widow is on the script means they might already have that information to begin with. So it's not that much of a liability. And I think, being woken up and asked to choose a player, or being woken up and told that you were holding Little Monster, is always a fun way of starting your nights.
Fair enough. There was one that I said that I would come back to, and I think it's time for me to come back to it. How do you feel, Dan, about Little Monster and Lycanthrope being on the script together?
I mean, I've seen different scripts have them in existence. I mean, the Lycanthrope serving there kind of as your faux demon choosing the kills instead of the storyteller kind of checks out. I don't know if you guys have any direct frustrations with that interaction. I know there's spiciness around it.
Yeah, so I'm wary of it. I think it can work, but it's not the greatest. And the reason for that is the reason that the storyteller makes kills in a low monster game is because it's not like a normal demon. They have a very powerful ability to change who the demon is every single night, without necessarily having to lose an evil player for it, like when a Fangu jumps or an Imp star passes, where an evil player is now dead. So the balance to that, one of the balances to that, is that the storyteller is the one who makes the kills. And when you have a lycanthrope, you aren't making the kills necessarily. The lycanthrope is often making the choice for you. And that can actually greatly swing the balance in ways towards either team, to be fair. Like, it's just, it can result in a very swingy game that maybe you would have gotten something a little bit less swingy or frustrating or difficult for somebody to deal with when you have the ability to choose who dies yourself. Yes, the lycanthrope can still hit evils and they can still miss, and that still puts it in your hands to who to kill. But the low monster's balancing is that the hands have, the kills have always been in your hands, that they are always in your hands. And I have run games where a lycanthrope just kept hitting good players, and it got to the point where evil was stomping so incredibly hard, and I was at a point in the game where, as a storyteller, I would normally kill an evil player in the night there for balance reasons, and I couldn't because the lycanthrope just kept choosing good players, and it tied my hands. And the point at which they started choosing evil players was too late in the game, and it actually ended up being a liability to its own team as a result. So I think it's an interaction that should be proceed with caution.
Yeah, I think that's kind of sums up my thoughts, but I don't know if you have anything in defense of it or in response to that, Dan?
No, I think that is a very fair understanding / critique of that interaction. I think Go on. No. I think the goal also with keeping the amount of protection that we had on that script, or on the script as well, is to try to create a number of targets that the lycanthrope beyond the evil team will bounce off of. So I know that game state can absolutely happen, but between the innkeeper, mayor, recluse, there's and the evil team.
Yeah.
There are targets to avoid.
Emram says maybe lycanthropes should kill themselves at night if they suspect that's the case. Yeah, they can do that.
They can, but yeah,
that would cause 2 deaths.
and you as a storyteller, you can't rely on the player doing that because you're not making the player's choices. So, but I do think that that there's a good point here to be made that there are things that can help balance the lycanthrope out if you were to put it in a low monster game. You can put in an innkeeper who can throw them off. You can put in a recluse to throw them off. You can make them the drunk, and it's technically not a lycanthrope. There are some ways that you can potentially get around some of that in a little monster game to sort of ease some of the storyteller agency back into your hands where it's really designed to be.
I think that the issue is, or the core issue is, that Lycanthrope and Little Monster are doing two very different things with the same core idea, which is for semi-public, but very semi-public, outed evil players. Obviously, that's the idea of the Little Monster anyway. Lycanthrope is doing its own thing, but it was a core of the character. And unfortunately, those two ideas have something of a weakness there. But yeah, it's okay. It's not. I don't think it's horrible, but it is again something to be aware of. But yeah, I don't know if there's anything else I really need to talk about. We've spoken about the minions, the Cerenovas, the Pit Hag. We've not gone into too much detail on, but I'm not sure if there is anything to go into detail on. What value is there in creating evil townsfolk on the script? Because that's always an interesting thing for a Pit Hag to do.
Yeah, that's a really interesting. I'm sure you guys will appreciate some of this conversation. I think in the early version of this script, I had a goon in here for outsiders flipping. And in a script that I do really enjoy in the advanced Dungeons, I can never pronounce it, and demons, there's a similar spread of minions and the goon in that one. We played a game in the PDX group where a very adept pit hag kept creating goons and swapping them into townsfolk, and then working with their other fellow evil team to trigger the goon, transform the goon into something else, and kept refreshing goon recycling, even in that script, which was something that I thought was very spicy. So by the end, they had a evil team of 6 players, and the balance was completely thrown off. In this particular script, I think the goal, with as much chaos as there is going on, keeping the balance of the number of evil players, with the exception of the Fengdu jump, was something that I wanted to kind of keep on the script simple for that purpose. Especially because your team can shift around with the Snake Charmer, and the Magician throws off some of that coordination as well. So I did not put any extra evil townsfolk on the script with a good amount of intentionality.
Nathan, any thoughts? Interesting things to do as a pit hag?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, a very commonplace pit hag move with the drunk on the script is you create a drunk, and then you hope that you've hit a townsfolk already, and so the storyteller is not going to tell them anything, and so they just suddenly become a hidden drunk.
Sure.
I might consider trying to, basically balloonist cycle, so turn somebody into a balloonist, but then turn them back into something else, and then turn them back into a balloonist, and just sort of scuff up any info that they could have gotten.
That is not something I've seen before, but that is spectacularly funny.
One thing
it's very cruel.
Yeah.
One thing that I was very worried about with the pit hag on the script, and at a certain point, it was another house rule jinx that I've moved away from, but I would be actually curious about your feedback on this, was if you are the pit hag, you know that there is not a magician at play, and you can just create magicians to mess up people's info.
Yeah.
And yeah, you can do that.
Certainly brick someone that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's still worse than creating an outsider, really. I think it's fine.
I think it feels a little bit worse because, like, if you get turned into an outsider, at least there's a chance that you might still get Fang Gu jumped to, and so you have an incentive to, like, not out. But if you get turned into a magician, then I think it's just fully disappointing.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's a fair point. Okay, let me rephrase that. It's no worse than being turned into an outsider on a script that doesn't have a Fang Gu. Obviously, as an outsider, you might still be doing something, so it depends on the outsider, but in general. You're saying something, Dan? Sorry.
No, that's all been really good.
Okay. I'm going to save my fun play for a pit hag for later. We've spoken about the Widow. Anything else that anybody wants to say on the demon choices? No, fair enough.
No, I think they're all pretty good. I think you could make this configuration work. I think swapping Imp out for Rigor Mortis could also work.
Alex, pit hagging someone to Magician is like being pit hagged into Poppy Grower. It is, but it's slightly less funny because if you pit hag somebody into the Poppy Grower, you then, when they die, get told who the evil team are again, even though you already know, which is funny.
That is pretty funny. You know what? Maybe that would actually be useful if a Snake Charming happened.
Yeah, it can be. I've almost seen that happen, except it was a Poppy Grower game, so the poisoner poisoned the Poppy Grower. Bad. But yeah. Dan, is there anything that you think that we've not really touched on that you wanted to talk about at all?
No, I mean, this has been really helpful. The one character that we have not even mentioned yet, but is kind of playing a weird role in the script, is the Barber.
Oh, you're right. We've completely overlooked the Barber. Go ahead.
Yeah, this was one of the ones where I don't want to say it was a late addition, but it was another way for the demon to move that was popped in there to create some mobility for the Puka if the Barber was executed. It is, one of the outsiders that I'm still kind of noodling with there. It lets possible explanations for why characters could have changed, right? So a player that's told that they are now a new townsfolk could be in a Barber swap situation, or be created by like you as a pit hag can create a drunk, and then if that player is told a role that they are not, then you can say that you were Barber swapped or something, right? You can create weird interactions with the Barber. But
yeah, I think the positives for Barber on the script is, of course, the pit hag and what that offers up for the evil team in terms of bluffing. I think negatives for the Barber on the script are the Puka. If the Puka kills the Barber's poisoned when they die, so they don't get a swap. And in a little monster game, a Barber swap between evils is mostly meaningless. I mean, I guess what you could do is if you have a dead minion, you can swap them with one of the living minions to put a specific minion ability back into play if you really wanted. But I think Barber could probably be swapped out to something else.
I will say that I personally disagree with what you just said about Puka Barber, because Barber is phrased in the past tense, not when you die. Obviously, there are interpretations that causes problems sometimes, but I think in this case it's to the benefit of the Barber as a character that it's phrased that way. I think that it's within the Barber's ability that you can very easily and legitimately read it as Barber dies, Barber becomes unpoisoned. Barber's ability, if you died today or tonight, kicks in, and then the Puka gets a swap.
And I very much disagree because Ed has ruled that the Barber is on a trigger. The trigger is their death, so you run it immediately after their death, but they died poisoned. So
it doesn't say in the almanac, which is annoying and unfortunate.
Yeah, it sure is. But the thing is that I don't think that you can rule a Barber in one specific way just because of one demon. Like, the other demons will all suffer for ruling it that way just so Puka can play nice with it.
I think you can get away with running it when you run it while still keeping that. But it's tangential at best. So run it how you want, but there is disagreement. Yeah, anything else but obviously be clear with your players how you run Anything else that you wanted to talk about on Barbuk, Dan?
No, that was one of the ones that came in towards the end of the development of the script. My aversion for gooning and creating weird goon game states has slowed me down on putting that in there, even though it would provide another explanation for No Death Knights. The other one that would just finish up I'll call it like the Madness Suite, would be the Mutant, but it's another one of those. Yeah, it's just finishing out the collection of Outsiders.
Sure. Okay. In which case, if there is nothing else that you want to talk about on the script, Dan?
No, I mean, honestly, even just talking about it with you guys, you guys had some honestly great conversations around certain interactions here that even I didn't, see in my revisions here.
Nathan, anything else on the script that we've not really touched on?
No.
Okay. In which case, I have a couple of questions to finish us off the process of talking about the script as it is. And we'll start with you, Dan, as our guest. You pull a character from the bag. It's blue. What do you want it to be, and what are you going to do with it?
Ooh, which character of all of the blue characters?
Yep.
Experimental or not experimental?
No, as in on the script. On the script.
Oh, on this script.
Yeah, on the script. What are you pulling, and what are you doing with it?
Oof. I could play Clockmaker close to the chest here. Just hold that information very tight. I think with Recluse, you might even be benefited by not outing that too early and putting that in a situation where, if you're staying quiet as the Recluse, potentially thinking that there might be Fangus out there, but you are confusing the worlds that exist. So hiding that recluseness is another spicy piece of world to destroy. So that might be another thing that I have fun or enjoyment doing as the Recluse.
I think we've agreed that the plural of Fangu is Fangis. Navian, what are you doing?
Sorry, are we looking at good rolls here?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. There's no Raven Keeper or Farmer or Sage, so that means I'm going Fortune Teller.
I had a feeling you might say that.
That being said, I'd probably also be fine to be an outsider because I might get Fangu jump too.
Fair enough. I mean, you might be the drunk Fortune Teller.
True. I can still hold on hopes that I could be both a Fortune Teller and a Fangu in the same game.
Absolutely. You could be the Fortune Teller who gets pit hagged into the drunk, not told anything, and then Fangu jumps. You get to be everything.
Yeah, and then I can say that I got a yes on the player who died in the night. So clearly that was a Fangu jump or maybe an Imp Star Pass. But either way, I got correct information, so don't look at me.
Absolutely. I think I had some words of criticism for it earlier, but I think I'm going to go with the Innkeeper. I think that there are interesting social and mechanical plays that can be made with an Innkeeper here, and a lot of just fun and interesting things that you can do with it. Same question to you, Dan, except this time your character's red. What are you doing?
Oh my god. If your token's red on the script, I don't know if if you're a red demon, then it's figuring out whether or not you potentially are the lunatic throughout most of the game, and worrying about folks that are lying directly to you. Lunatic, getting a widow is a real brutal, fun way of having the lunatic go the long game. If I'm a minion in this setup, I'm going to have a lot of fun coordinating with my other minions to sow chaos and piece together a large web of lies to tell good team. There's a real fun, the Cerenovus madness paired with a pit hagging is a very fun combination to lock players into certain binds.
Canadian?
Widow.
If you can't have poisoner, you'll have poison.
Yeah, but also it gets the fun social aspects of spy, right? Where I think part of like how you play spy is you need, like, you have all of this knowledge and you need to still convince people that you don't have that knowledge. So you know who's lying to you exactly when and probably why. But you can't let them know it. So you get the fun social aspect of the spy, while you also get the poison. And I think you get an interesting choice at the start of the game of specifically who to poison.
I'm gonna link back to something that I said earlier, my foreshadowing, if you will, for this pick. I'm going with the pit hag. I don't think I've ever said pit hag before, but I'm going with the pit hag. And I am turning myself, or possibly my teammate, but probably myself, into the cannibal and using it offensively.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a fun play.
I think that there are a lot of townsfolk that the evil team can benefit from having the abilities of that. I just want all of them. So that's what I'm going to do.
And you have the advantage of never being poisoned or made drunk because you are only eating good players.
Absolutely. So with that all being said, Dan, thank you for joining us. But this is your turn to talk now about the script. You have the floor for, well, as long as you want it. Sum up what you're planning on doing with the script, what you think, what this conversation has, if this conversation has helped you in any way to look at any potential revisions, or if you think it's good as it is, or what you planning on doing in the future, whether that's with another script. The floor's yours.
Yeah, no. Again, thank you guys so much for having me. It's honestly been a pleasure to be able to work through kind of this script as I've thought about it over the past few months. But like, have you guys take on all those interactions and even the weird edge cases? I love talking about those. Weird characters that haven't touched in any script before and how they might interact. So there's definitely good stuff that I've gotten out of this conversation here. I think the balloonist coming off being able to be messed with probably inappropriately by the minstrel and not serving its role as a townsfolk in that is something that I will probably take a look at. If I can avoid putting a sentinel on there, I might try to do that. But finding another townsfolk that can serve that role. I think I'm always going to be in the back of my mind thinking about that Vigor Mortis interaction, whether or not having that house rule around the evil twin Lycan is a reason enough to not have the Vig on the script. That's another thing I'll think about. And then revisiting the minstrel itself and seeing if there's another passive is the wrong role, but a more interactive reason for no deaths. I might think of other roles that go there. Those are my three main takeaways from the conversation as far as where it went. Yeah.
Wonderful. In which case, I think that that pretty much wraps up our discussion about this script. Dan, is there anywhere that anything that you want to plug? Anywhere people can find you?
No, I will plug the PDX Blood on the Clocktower group, of which Benny and Ruth have been playing with you guys, and Stefan for a little while. They have definitely become my second family here in Portland. So having them join your fabulous community and us kind of joining together has definitely been a pleasure to see. So I will definitely plug them. And if you guys meet up at Clock Tower Con next week with Benny, I will tell Benny to give a giant hug to both you guys on my behalf.
Absolutely. If you happen to be in the Portland area, which statistically incredibly unlikely that anybody watching is in the Portland area, but not already in your group. But if you just happen to be, I'm sure that there'll be a game or two waiting for you. Navian, where can people find you?
Well, you will next be able to see me here tomorrow and every other week on Mondays. And you can also find me Friday nights on Connecticut Blood on the Clock Tower. Although not this week because I will be at Clock Tower Con, as will my co-host Demeta. So we will be taking the week off from streaming.
As will I. There will not be a stream next Tuesday here. Almost certainly. I don't know. Maybe I'll do something in a fit of delirium. But there will not be a stream on Sunday, and there will not be a stream on Friday, and there will not be a stream probably on Tuesday. But there will be one tomorrow, as Navian just said, which will be, hopefully, we'll have down there for, I think you said the first game?
Yep. I'll be there for the first game at 11.
When we'll be playing The Ladder, we've talked about today. Looking forward to it, as always. Navian, I think that we are going to be useless for a while after tomorrow. Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, we look forward to having you back. We'll probably have a variety of replace gooses.
Substitutions. Substickies.
Something in here. I'm trying to fit foul in somewhere, but I can't. So make up your own pun. I have faith in you. So for game 2, we're going to run a script that needs written. Not sure exactly which one yet. We'll probably make it up on the spot if we've not made a decision by then. But it will be a goose script. Yeah, we'll miss you, but I'm sure you'll be back in good time. I think hopefully we'll have you back at some point in the month of May, although not as part of a regular stream, because if we can find a slot that works for everybody in our schedules, we have a Giga stream coming up. There is not a date set, but you have all been incredibly generous with your donations to help us cover our Clock Tower Con expenses. So yeah, we're gonna party. Details to be announced, of course. I owe you at least 7 games in a row. And hopefully, Navian will be able to be there. I'm aware that you'll be. We shall see. That all being said, thank you once again, Navian. Thank you again, Dan. I'll see you both tomorrow. But until then, have a great evening. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.